Hi, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending when you're looking at this video. The point of this video is to walk through some of the concepts that I think some students might have struggled with, starting with chapters 1 through 4. The first thing I want to talk about are non-tariff barriers. They have been successful in limiting international expansion. These can include import quotas, which limit the amount of product one country can export to another country. For example, the United States could tell China that they have a limit on how many t-shirts they can export to the US. That would be an example of an import quota. Other examples could be packaging and labeling restrictions, complex regulations, import licenses, product classification, and many others. The important thing here is that these are non-tax barriers, non-tariff barriers. The next thing I want to talk about is regiocentric orientation. So this involves viewing the world and potential markets into different regions. That's what we mean by the orientations. For example, in regiocentric orientation, a company could consider the EU to be one region, and they would probably market their campaigns similarly for both France and Spain. The next item I want to talk about is the quiz question number 3 on quiz 2. What can impede the optimal functioning of business, tax the infrastructure, and lead to the scarcity of natural resources, especially raw materials? The answer to that question is population growth. This was missed by several students, so I wanted to go over it in a little bit more detail. In your text starting on page 52, it discusses how high population growth has led to famine in countries such as Ethiopia and Somalia. The infrastructure of these countries is limited and cannot accommodate the large increases in population. When cities that are large, such as Mexico City, have more population than they can manage, it has ultimately led to unoptimal functioning of businesses. And you can understand that, for example, Mexico City only can grow, it only has the infrastructure to hold so many people. And when there's more people than that, they run into problems and businesses can't be as successful. The table 2-4 on page 54 shows the different growth rates in different parts of the world. Overall, population growth is much higher in low and middle income countries than for high income countries. This makes sense. The average number of children a family in the US has is 1.5, I believe. That is much less than the number of children families have in China or India, for example. Okay, the next thing I want to discuss is chapter 3. So chapter 3 discusses the barriers that are used by countries. There are many different reasons why countries feel the need to protect their own country. Some of the tools they use are in the form of tariffs. Tariffs are taxes imposed on goods entering a certain country. The homework this week dealt with listening to an NPR program about tariffs. I believe there was a 16.5% tariff or tax on t-shirts. Exports that our country produces lead to a lot of jobs. When we import, we don't simply need as many domestic jobs. Tariffs can be used to raise money, since you would not need as many jobs if you were importing a lot. Protect local jobs. Discourage some products from entering a country that the leaders might view as unnecessary, right? This could be a case in emerging markets where some items that the Western world considers important, they might not. The next thing I want to talk about is chapter 4. And in chapter 4, we talk about regional and political integration. Ideally, countries are more likely to trade with one another if they have a common culture. This can include language, legal, religion, values, and traditions. Regional proximity makes it easier for countries to trade with each other. An example of this would be the EU. It is much easier logistically and mileage-wise to transport a product from Madrid, Spain to Paris, France, than it is from Madrid, Spain to Los Angeles, California. The last thing I want to talk about today are free trade agreements. The most common one that you probably are aware of is NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. The goal is to eliminate tariffs and non-tariff barriers to make it easier to trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. The important thing about NAFTA that I'd like you to know is that at least 60% of the product must come from North America to be considered duty-free. That's all for today. I hope this was helpful to you, and please let me know if you have any other questions.